But now, as China's political season continues, the country's future engagement with countries here in Africa is again a topic of interest. China is investing over $7 billion a year in infrastructure projects across the continent rather. And analysts are wondering how decisions made at this meeting will influence China's future engagement with countries across Africa. Uche okoronkwo sat down with an economic analyst, Anzeste Were, to find out her take on the future of Sino-African relations and the view from the United States.
I think one of the things he fails to notice is that a lot of this appetite from debt is coming from African governments themselves. It's not as though any money is being forced on the African governments. These African governments looking to external partners to finance the different projects that they have in mind. And if you look at the appetite, we're also borrowing from, Europe and North America. For example, Kenya just issued a new Euro bond, about $3 billion. So that appetite is coming from the Africans, and I think China is responding in being that development partner that will contribute to the financing that African governments want.
Currently, China is investing over $7 billion per year on infrastructure projects in Africa. What are your thoughts on the China-Africa engagement so far?
That's a difficult question in the sense that one of the reasons that infrastructure drive is happening is because African governments are convinced that investing in infrastructure is a basic required to be the foundation of economic growth and prosperity. Now, the fundamental problem I've been having as an analyst is around, I think, the multiplier effect of infrastructure is overstated. That said, African governments have their spending priorities and they're out looking for money to get that financed. So you cannot blame debtors for providing debt when that demand for debt is already there in the African government. So for me, the conversation should really turn to Africans ourselves, looking at our appetite for debt and whether we can service it sustainably.
But what benefits do you think Africa has made from that engagement?
China was really the first country that really quite aggressively decided to aggressively finance infrastructure investment in the continent without any sort of rules and regulations linked to that financing. And so they had a very big window through which they were able to provide that debt to the African nations, which the African nations were happy to take because it ushered in a new era. And you have to remember that they really started that drive to invest in Africa when we still had this negative narrative around Africa. We were still, the pain of the world, with the basket case of the world. We've seen that narrative change to an Africa rising narrative, and now we're beginning to see a bit more sophisticated analysis around what is going on in Africa. It's not either all good or all bad, and I think we're beginning to see that complexity happening. So one of the reasons why this has been important is that China has been a partner through that entire evolution and through that entire process.